It's that time of year again, when the streets are filled with tiny ghosts and goblins, witches and wizards, and all manner of spooky costumes. Trick-or-treating is a time-honored Halloween tradition, enjoyed by children and adults alike. But what many people don't know is that this seemingly innocent custom has a dark history that dates back centuries. The origins of trick-or-treating can be traced back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. This festival marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter, a time of year when the veil between the living and the dead was believed to be thinnest. The Celts believed that on the night of Samhain, the dead would rise from their graves and wander the earth, seeking food and shelter. In order to appease these restless spirits, people would light bonfires and leave offerings of food and drink outside their homes. Over time, the festival of Samhain was absorbed into Christian tradition, and became known as All Saints' Day or All Hallows' Day. The night before, which was still believed to be a time when the dead returned to earth, became known as All Hallows' Eve or Halloween. In the Christian tradition, people would go souling on All Saints' Day, going from door to door asking for soul cakes in exchange for prayers for the dead. This practice eventually evolved into trick-or-treating as we know it today. However, the tradition of trick-or-treating wasn't always as innocent as it is now. In fact, in its early days, it was often associated with mischief and even vandalism. In some parts of Europe, young people would go guising on Halloween, dressing up in costumes and going door to door demanding food and drink. If the homeowners refused to give them anything, they would play pranks, such as throwing eggs or soaping windows. In the United States, trick-or-treating didn't become popular until the 1920s and 1930s. It was during this time that Halloween was becoming more of a community-oriented holiday, with parties and parades being held in many cities. Trick-or-treating was seen as a way for children to participate in the festivities, while also keeping them out of trouble. However, even in the early days of trick-or-treating in the US, there were still reports of vandalism and pranks being played on Halloween night. In the 1950s and 1960s, trick-or-treating became a more organized and supervised activity. Community groups and schools began sponsoring trick-or-treat for UNICEF campaigns, in which children would go door to door collecting money for charity. This helped to shift the focus of the holiday away from mischief and vandalism, and towards community service and goodwill. Despite the modern-day focus on candy and costumes, the dark history of trick-or-treating still lingers in some parts of the world. In Mexico and other Latin American countries, the Day of the Dead is celebrated on November 1st and 2nd, during which time families honor their deceased loved ones by leaving offerings of food and drink at altars or graves. In some communities, children will go door to door asking for calaveritas or small sugar skulls in exchange for prayers for the dead. This tradition has its roots in Aztec and other indigenous traditions, and serves as a reminder of the ancient origins of Halloween and trick-or-treating. Of course, not all trick-or-treating is innocent and harmless. There have been occasional reports of tainted candy, kidnapping attempts, and other crimes associated with Halloween. However, these incidents are rare and are often the result of isolated incidents rather than widespread trends. In the end, trick-or-treating remains a popular and beloved Halloween tradition, enjoyed by millions of people around the world. It may have a dark and somewhat murky history, but it has evolved into a fun and festive activity that brings communities together and allows us to celebrate the spooky, supernatural side of life. As long as we approach it with caution and common sense, there's no reason why we can't continue to enjoy trick-or-treating for many years to come.